Hi, everyone, and welcome to our workshop Build Your Path Professional Growth Tactics for First Gen Tech Professionals. My name is Sara Martinez Escobar, and I will be helping Josh Chang today. Josh Chang is our Director for Global Operations and Strategy at HubSpot. And in this session, you will hear from a longtime HubSpotter about actionable strategies first gen tech professionals can use to overcome common barriers and accelerate their career intakes. So please help me welcome Josh to the stage. And Josh, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sarah. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? I guess Sarah's the only one that will respond. All good? Cool. All right. Hey, everyone. My name's Josh. As Sarah mentioned, I am a director on the global operations and strategy team here at HubSpot. I've been at HubSpot for about 7.5 years, and we're going to talk through some specific tactics for first gen and tech professionals in the industry looking to break in, kind of pivot, and figure out what they want to do. Let me just skip ahead. So quick agenda. So we're going to cover a number of things today, but the big things are going to be, we'll do a quick intro for myself, kind of talk through some of the specific challenges that we face as first gen tech professionals and kind of more generally as tech professionals in general these days. Talk about building growth mindsets, developing specific skills you need to succeed in the industry. We'll talk about networking and mentorship, creating a personal brand, as well as kind of wrapping it all together and creating a growth plan to really action on the things we learn. So we'll get started. Cool. So I'm Josh. My LinkedIn is here. I'll put it in the chat as well. Let me do that real quick. So you all have it. Everyone can see that. So I am a first generation Taiwanese American. My family immigrated from Taiwan to the States. I grew up outside of Boston, but my parents are both from Taiwan originally. I still have tons and tons of family over there. We have been in Boston since essentially I was born. And so I've been in the area for a long time. But as my tech career, we kind of spanned a bunch of different places. So I actually did not start my career in tech. I graduated college. I actually started working at an advertising agency. I was doing client services. It was definitely not a tech job. I was responding to client emails, working in meetings, kind of just helping out on the day-to-day stuff, not really doing tech work, marketing work, et cetera, et cetera. From there, I worked for Toyota for 3 years. Much earlier on in my career, I was more of a marketing generalist. And so I was a marketer and kind of learned a lot about the automotive industry, car dealerships, marketing in general. But then after that, I pivoted back to the agency world. I worked for a really small advertising agency in Boston called Norbella. I was there for about 2 years. And when I was there, I pivoted again, kind of back to digital marketing and advertising. Was more focused on online marketing, online advertising, and built up a skill set there, really started there as kind of an entry-level marketer, learned that, okay, cool, like there's all of these like different marketing tactics. And what I started to realize was when I was there was that I really liked data, spreadsheets, and really wanted to learn how to code. I went to school not in a tech capacity. I didn't learn how to code in college. I didn't know how to code when I worked for Toyota, but realized that, okay, cool, like I really like data. I really like working with data, and I'm gonna kind of start to try and develop some of those skills. So while I was at Norbella, realized that, okay, hey, we probably need more of a data capacity at the company. How can I go and pick up the skills that I need to fill that role, find the right mentors within the space, and bring that back to the company? And so I was really able to figure out how to leverage what I was learning there, what I was learning at this boot camp that I took to learn how to do kind of data analytics, and bring it back to the company and take that and develop a kind of function at the company that we could use. There was a bit of a wrench though, because I had an opportunity come up at this company called HubSpot. HubSpot opportunity came up, and I had the chance to pivot back to a marketing role, and it was really, really kind of questioning the choice back then. Really liked the company I worked at. I was getting this cool opportunity to do more data work, and I was going to shift back to kind of more of a marketing role. And I talked to some mentors, I talked to some people, and what they said was like, yep, you're doing some of the data stuff you want to do now, but at HubSpot, you're going to be able to surround yourself with people that really know what they're doing, really have done this before. And that is an opportunity you can't really pass up. With that, you will be able to kind of absorb more data, more information, pick up things, and find more opportunities. So I took the job, obviously, I'm here. And I've now been at HubSpot for 7.5 years. Started, as I said, on the marketing team. I moved into more of an acquisition analytics role. So when I was here, kind of figured out what some of the needs within the marketing team were. We're like, hey, everyone, I really like doing this data thing. I think we need to do a little bit more on the marketing team. And so I moved more into an acquisition analytics role. And then about 3.5 years ago, moved more into a full-time ops role, which is the team I'm on today. I'm now leading a team of data analysts who specialize in marketing and sales strategy and operations. We work across different functions across the company, but really supporting our demand gen engine, helping the company drive new demand to the business and turn that into revenue. So that's a really high level view of my career journey. I'm going to touch on a little bit as we get through the presentation. But just to share a little bit more about myself, I live in Melrose, Massachusetts. So it's just outside of Boston. I'm about 15-20 minutes from the HubSpot headquarters in Cambridge. I have a dog named Macy, who is my favorite thing in the world. As you can see here, she has a very cute face. I'm a big skier. This is me skiing in Japan. And I also bike and run a lot. So that's a little bit about me. All right, so question for the chat. What are some obstacles that you think first generation professionals might encounter? And this could be more general obstacles. It could be obstacles more specific to us as first gen. I'll give everyone a second to type some stuff out. And maybe it could be things that you've faced, things that you know people have faced, et cetera, et cetera. Is the chat working? Or do we just not have a lot of people? There we go. Nice. All right, so yeah, keep typing things out. Yeah, definitely some good answers in here. The big things for me, tech's always changing. You're always having to adapt. I'm similar to a couple of these. Like, I didn't know where to start. I didn't even know that I wanted to work in tech. I think I figured out, like, okay, here are the things that I like working on. Here are some things that, okay, companies might need. This is what I like. And then tech kind of just happened to be where a lot of those opportunities and those jobs were. But yeah, I think, like, to some of the points in here, there's like a lot of non-tech opportunities. I started my first half of my career, first few years of my career, not in tech. But you're able to kind of like pick up some of those skills and then understand, okay, like going to a tech company or being at a tech company, again, you're going to be able to surround yourself with these really, really smart people who are doing all of these things that you want to do and potentially probably doing them better than you. So I think there's a lot there. The barriers to entry for tech professionals, especially for first gens, are a lot higher and really convoluted. There's a lot of hidden bias for first gens and people of color. Yeah, I see the cultural fit pieces. Yeah, there's a lot of things that may make it harder for you to find opportunities, and kind of like all of those things coupled with just the job market today and kind of where we're at in the economy and so on and so forth. It really just makes it really, really difficult. And there's a lot of demand for these types of opportunities and jobs. It can be hard to put yourself out there as a first generation Taiwanese immigrant like I was always taught to like not put yourself out there or not make too much noise or not kind of, I'm also like very introverted, right? And so I'm not good at just like randomly reaching out to people on LinkedIn or randomly going up to someone at a networking event and being like, hey, like, can you give me a job? It's not really how it works. And yeah, we have like a lot of limited access to industry networks and resources. Not a lot of things that we have kind of like clear access to that others might. So and then the big one for me, imposter syndrome. I still deal with this every day. Like I don't know what I'm doing, or like I actually am being a bad leader to my team. You know, all of that type of thing, where we've really kind of been taught, or it's been ingrained in us, right? And then I think the most painful thing, it's still impossible to explain to my family what I do for work. So cool. All right. Well, we'll jump a little bit into growth and skill development, kind of talk through some more specific strategies here, and then hopefully let you come away with like at least one or two things that you can go and try, and we'll have some CTAs in here that'll give you an opportunity to do that. So these are kind of like 4 core tenets for me. Learning from failure. I think understanding that failure is not like an end, but think of it as like a stepping stone to where you need to get to. I failed a lot early in my career. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was working for an advertising agency and pretty miserable, and realized kind of pretty quickly that like, oh, I don't actually want to be doing this thing I'm doing, right? And so like you could definitely consider that a failure, but understanding that, okay, I need to leverage this into kind of the next steps, right? And like figure out, okay, like, all right, I've figured out some of the things that I don't want to do. I really needed to pivot after working for both the advertising agency and for Toyota. Didn't have a ton of growth opportunity there. What I actually did, and I applied to business school. So I took the GMAT 3 times actually. Didn't do well the first time, didn't do well the second time, and also surprisingly didn't do that well on the third time. Applied to business school, didn't actually get into any of the business schools that I applied to. And that was really tough for me. I was like, okay, that was like my way out of these jobs where I didn't have a lot of growth opportunity, success, really wanted to pivot. And I was like, all right, what am I going to do now? Right. And so went and found more of an entry level job, kind of in a bit of a pivot from what I had been doing. But that had really allowed me to kind of like step into the roles that helped grow my career and got me to where I am today. So yeah, learning from failure, like definitely analyze those mistakes and understand what you can improve. And then embrace those challenges, right? Like develop the resilience, step out of your comfort zone. I was going from a company where like I could have just kind of coasted along, could have just kind of hung out, was making like okay money. It wasn't amazing, but it was fine. But I was like, all right, gotta stay out of this comfort zone. I need to just quit this job, not have a job, figure out, okay, like this'll give me the kind of boost to go and find what I really want to do and really what I want to look for. And so I in retrospect kind of view that as like a bit of a step backwards that was necessary. But once I did that, led to more opportunities going forward. Continuous learning and adaptability. So really knowing that what you're doing now, like you could always be better at, right? Like you're never done growing, constantly try and adapt to different trends. When I got to the agency, and when I got to HubSpot, I knew that I was around all of these people that potentially knew what they were doing, or it could give me the opportunity to do so. And then I figured out, okay, like here are the 3 skills that I need to develop to build opportunities and like give myself the chance to have these opportunities. And then let's go fill those needs with the harder tech skills that I actually can go out and get. And practicing self-reflection. Always like kind of check in on your progress, like where, if you're trying to develop a skill, make sure that you have clear actionable steps to get there. And again, as first gens in tech, sometimes we're taught to blend into the background. We don't want to make too much of a fuss. Turns out that doesn't work great at big tech companies, but there are ways to do it that are more authentic to you. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't need to You don't need to be the one presenting in every single big meeting. But as long as you're doing good work and understand that success in tech is a team sport, it's not an individual sport, you'll be okay. And career growth is not linear. Like you do you, right? I know people in different industries where like their progression is pretty much just a function of how long you're at the company. I know a lot of teachers. I know a lot of people who work in consulting. Like tenure there is basically how you progress. You just stay there for a long, long time. Definitely some times where I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty nice. Sounds a lot easier, but definitely not the case in tech. I've had a lot of ups and downs throughout my career. Probably, actually, definitely still will. But it's going to be different for every person, path, industry, kind of skill set, and it's important to know that and be 100% okay with it. And so I'm not going to go through all of these, and I'll work with Sarah to make sure that the deck gets shared out to whoever wants it, and I think this is going to be public after. So just listing out some open-ended questions to guide your next steps. I think a lot of these questions are around how do I figure out what I want to do, and what motivates me to get up in the morning every day and start work. That totally okay if that's like just money or like having the right title. Also okay if it's like, oh, I want to do something I'm like genuinely interested in. It's totally okay if it's like, oh, I just want to like code all day and be more of a tech specialist or an IC. All of these things are good, and making sure that like, okay, when am I at my best? When am I enjoying work the most? Really important to understand all of that. And then you're going to run into setbacks. There's going to be times you didn't get a promotion. There's going to be times you didn't get a particular job. There are going to be times where you applied to a bunch of jobs and you got one, but it wasn't actually the one you wanted, and you have to figure out if you want to take it or not. There's lots of times this is going to happen in your career, in my career, and really important to take that step back and reflect on, hey, like what went wrong? Like what could I have done differently? What could I do better next time? But also go get some outside perspectives. Talk to people you trust. Talk to people that you work with. Even when you're applying for jobs, I think the best thing that you can do if you don't get a job is ask for feedback. Like, hey, like what could I have done better? Like what would have been the difference for me to actually get this job? You may not hear back, but if you do, even better. Cool. All right. Another question for the chat, and we're going to shift more into skill development now. What's a tech skill you've either learned in your career thus far or want to learn to progress your career? I'll put a couple in here as well for me. All right. All right, I'll just keep plowing along. So before diving into those actual skills, besides the obvious, you need to understand why you're trying to skill up. Like, what are you actually trying to learn here, right? And is that to get a new job, to expand the scope in your current job, to break into a new industry? Really important to tie skills to a specific role or title you aspire to. Even if you're just like browsing LinkedIn and you're looking at different companies or people that you're interested in, just like go find someone who you're like, oh, like, I want that job or I want that role in the future, and be like, all right, cool. Like scroll down to the skills they have potentially listed on their LinkedIn and be like, all right, here are some skills that maybe I should pick up, maybe I should learn. And then it's also really important to think about, do these objectives align with your existing interests, your existing strengths? If it's going to be a complete pivot, like, do you think you have the ability or the desire or the motivation to change and pick up things that you're not currently comfortable with? So kind of three key things to think about. But it's really helpful, or like it can be helpful to just be like, oh, I want to go learn how to code. but important to be more specific than that, and important to think about, okay, like here's exactly what I'm trying to do with this new skill set once I get it. So what are some of the essential tech skills? This is definitely not a complete list, and maybe slightly biased towards my roles and things I've done in my past, but big one for me, data analysis, like as simple as Excel and Google Sheets, and getting really, really good at that. Lots of like tech and non-tech companies, if you have those skill sets, like you're gonna go a long way, and you're gonna be able to do a lot of great work. So that's around kind of like data analysis, visualization. As you kind of get down this list, it gets a bit more technical, and depending on what you're trying to do, tons and tons of resources out there, which I'll share a couple on the next slide, that give you some kind of like more of these hard skills that you can pick up and develop. So a lot of core technical skills there. Again, try and tie them to job descriptions you see, job titles you see. But then you kind of get into some of the emerging tech space too. And this is definitely not my wheelhouse in terms of like AI and machine learning, but lots of really cool opportunities out there that are coming up both at tech companies and non-tech companies where these are like really, really in-demand skill sets. So if you can kind of pick up some of those skills, learn from the people that have them, you're going to do great. So, and then the big one down here too, soft skills, especially in leadership roles. As you kind of progress in your career and you get higher and higher, and if you're interested in going into more of a management track or more of a people manager or leadership track, the technical skills will be important, and you need to know enough to be dangerous, but the soft skills are really where you're gonna need to shine. Problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication. These are all very basic in general, and hard to say like, oh, I'm going to take a course and learn how to collaborate. Like, it's something you need to be really self-aware about and really understand. Okay, like, hey, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses. One of my weaknesses when I first started in my career was like I was not very good at presenting, like to execs, to leaders, to colleagues, and that was something where I needed to go out of my comfort zone and develop that skill set, right? And just throw myself into those situations, talk to people who are good at it, learn from people who are good at it passively, and kind of go from there. So don't discount the importance of soft skills in tech jobs. And then how to develop and refine these skills. There's lots and lots of different paths to do this, and a lot of this is probably not new to you. I would highlight one here under practical experience, identifying opportunities in your current job. That is kind of the single biggest thing that has helped me progress in my career to the roles that I have had in the past couple. Figuring out, okay, like here's a need for more data analysis, data analytics kind of support and capabilities. And so how do I get the skills to fill that very specific need? And it did align with my interests, and go from there. Prove yourself there, prove yourself that you can have an impact on that. And that'll really, really help you out as you go forward. But yeah, I think lots of different mentorship and networking opportunities as well. Just the fact that you're here today is a great sign for what you're trying to do, or you're trying to meet new people, break into the industry. So yeah, find more tech communities, forums, local meetups that you can join. Lots of in-person kind of events are always really, really helpful. I usually will go to in-person events all the time, and if you can meet one person, that could be the difference, right? So yeah, put yourself in those situations, and then seek mentors within your company or your industry. Again, like the worst thing that can happen if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn is they just ignore you and you're back where you were. But a lot of the times, like I'll get notes on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to respond. It takes me 30 seconds. And hey, you've made a connection. Like nothing may come out of it, but on the off chance that something does, you're in really good shape. So yeah, quick call to action. Think about a role you want to aim for or skill you want to develop in the next 6 months. Feel free to post those in the chat. And then, I don't know, next week, maybe let's go make a plan and do it. Cool. I want to quickly touch on mentorship. I know Dr. V did a great session specifically on mentorship earlier today. So if you didn't attend that one, would highly recommend you check it out. Check out the recording. I will touch on it here since it's been such an important thing for me as I've progressed in the context of all of these strategies. And it's especially important for first-gen tech professionals. Really great podcast to check out by Kimberly Brown, but it's literally someone who's been in your shoes before. Like I've been in your shoes before. I've been trying to network and find opportunities, and so yeah, they can help you, right? Like they've experienced the same thing, and if even better, if they're in a position you're aspiring to. So try and find those people, try and seek them out. But I really do boil it down to kind of 4 things. So identifying the who do you need to connect with to help you make your next move or understand what you want to do. Maybe you already know them. Who do you already know who's working in that area where you want to grow? How do you strengthen these connections? And this kind of comes back to the like, oh, we need to be authentic to yourself, right? Like I'm not the one posting on LinkedIn, posting on social media every day, or reaching out to 1 million people on LinkedIn. I'm more of a quality over quantity type guy. And so I'll really nurture the relationships I currently already have. But make sure that I'm going to them with very specific, very actionable questions, comments, figuring out like, okay, what is my desired outcome, and understanding the questions I need to go ask to get there, right? And kind of the worst thing is if I'm ever like doing informational interviews is like, oh, I like sign on to a Zoom or meet you in person and you don't have any questions for me. And I'm the one that needs to run the conversation. Like be really prepared for these conversations and be like, okay, cool. Like if I can get 1 or 2 things out of this conversation, what is that? Let me make sure those get answered. All right. I want to quickly talk about personal brand. I know I've touched on it a little bit. I don't personally think my personal brand is that great, but it's also like not authentic to me to be posting on LinkedIn every single day. But imagine you're meeting yourself for the first time on LinkedIn. Say you're like a recruiter and you're recruiting for the job that you really, really want. What are 1 to 2 qualities that you bring to the table that you want people to know? Let's just start to call some of these out in the chat. Let me put a couple of mine. Let me see. I am really good at, this is kind of a basic one. Really like data. I love to get more insight.
We have some answers here in the chat. I'm seeing data-driven decisions, Docker for good, adaptability,
Nice.
and self-starter. I myself can bring to the table. I am super organized and I love to plan everything. So I will probably have a Google Sheet for everything we're doing in every single project. I see. Love to translate data into actionable insights. That's a pretty cool one.
Nice. I love it. I love it. I love all of these.
Yes, Brandon shared that I am genuinely a passionate communicator with a visionary mindset. That's a pretty nice, Brandon.
Amazing. All right, cool. Well, we'll move on. But yeah, your personal brand, what's the value? Your personal brand can mean many, many, many different things. But at the end of the day, it's enhancing your reputation and credibility. It doesn't have to be on LinkedIn or Instagram, or I don't use TikTok, so I can't really speak to that. But it can differentiate you in a really, really competitive industry and open doors for new opportunities. But I keep saying this, the most important part is to make sure it's really, really authentic to you. Don't force it. You don't want it to feel like you're forcing it. If you have a persona online and then we talk and it's completely different, like that might be a little bit jarring. So yeah, like Lynn's saying, authenticity, super, super key. And so, yeah, understanding the value there. But first thing, leverage your current role. What are you doing in your jobs today or in your role that is really awesome and really cool? Highlight projects and achievements you have, like obviously respect company confidentiality, but where have you done good work and how can you show it? How can you find high impact projects or presentations so you can get more of that work on your resume or in your portfolio? And again, share those success stories. That's one of the things that I had to really adjust when I went from a really small company, it was 35 people, to a pretty big company, HubSpot, which was 1,500 when I joined and is now, what are we, over 8,000 or something. Sometimes it's more than just kind of doing good work. You need to make sure that your manager sees it, their manager sees it, their manager understands the value you're bringing to the table. So always come back and say, I did this. Here's the value I brought. This is why it's important. Coming back to that, creating and sharing valuable content. So beyond what you yourself have done, this could come in the form of just blogging or writing articles or sharing insight on industry trends that you've observed, giving your point of view on social media or on LinkedIn, attend conferences, meet people, see how people share their personal brand, see if there are opportunities for you to speak and give your expertise. And we at HubSpot, we have a lot of like internal publications, internal communications. Are there opportunities for you to volunteer for things like that in your company? If you're at a small company, maybe there's a perfect opportunity to start something like that and kind of create a publication that helps educate the rest of your colleagues and coworkers. Again, engaging on professional platforms, LinkedIn is the obvious one, but if you're interested in more technical work, like collaborating on GitHub, kind of digging into some projects there. But yeah, engage in industry conversations as much as you can. Even if you're not directly engaging with them, make sure you know them and understand them and put yourself in a position to engage with them in the future. And then networking. I would think about networking both internally, where you currently are at, and external, right? So internal, build relationships across different departments. I work in ops, but I work with marketing, I work with sales, I work with finance, I work with all of these different orgs, and a lot of times I really don't know what they actually do every day. And so I get a lot of value just reaching out to someone on finance team and being like, hey, what does your day-to-day look like? Like what are you thinking about as we go to get into the next month, the month after, right? And like that can be very, very different from what I'm thinking about, but hey, we work for the same company, and how do all of our objectives ladder up to each other? And join professional communities. I think this is something I keep saying, but lots of other people are in your shoes. And so learning from others, understanding what they need to do and what they're trying to do to advance in their careers can, I don't know, maybe give you some insight into how to progress your own. All right, so one more call to action here. So choose one platform, and it doesn't have to be a platform. It could be at work, kind of in your own communities, but choose one area to enhance your presence, or plan a piece of content to share, or do one of the things that I've mentioned here, and try and see if you can go do that next week. Cool. All right, we're nearing the end, but kind of wanted to tie a lot of this together and think about how do you actually create a long-term growth plan. So I think some of the slides I'd shared earlier show some of the questions to ask, some of the things to do. But I'll kind of leave you with two frameworks that have been helpful for me in my career, thinking about putting some kind of like actual meat behind the bones of what I've been saying. So this is the GROW model, but it really breaks it down into 4 different things. So setting your goals, what is the goal? and getting into the why of it. Why is this important to you? And kind of specifically, why is it important for you to do this right now? There's a bit of a reality piece here too, where how does this match up with the other priorities in your life? What are you willing to change to make this happen? Thinking through options. What are your first few steps here? The hardest part is always to get started on something, right? I have a lot of like house projects right now that I have just been procrastinating on for over a year, and literally like once I actually started, I'll finish it in a day or two. But I'm just procrastinating on it. I don't know what the first step is. I really need to research that. And so, yeah, like identify those first few steps, be really clear on what they are, and then it's easier to dive into them once you're ready. And then kind of like how will you know if you're progressing against this goal, and what will happen if you're not successful? Sometimes this is gonna take a lot of different forms and shapes, but understanding, okay, cool, like I have specific goals I need to hit, and that's kind of what the next slide is going to be. So anyone that works at HubSpot might be familiar with this framework of SMART goals, but making sure they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Last piece is very important there. So being really specific on the who, what, where, why. What are these goals? Example, I'm going to register tomorrow for an online course to learn Python. Making sure that's measurable. I'm going to commit to working on this course 3 days a week in addition to my full-time job. Achievable. Can the goal be reached within the allotted time? Mostly yes or no. I'm going to be pretty optimistic and say yes for that one. Is it relevant? I think that's like a good kind of gut check on this. Does it add value, help achieve the goals that you've laid out? Yes, learning Python will help prepare me for my next data analyst role. And then time bound. When will you accomplish this? Put kind of that date on it, keep yourself accountable, and let's set that up. Good analogy is I'm a pretty big runner, and I'm really bad at training unless I have a specific like race that I'm gearing up for. And then I can kind of structure everything around that date. The same applies for your career goals and the things you want to do and skills you want to pick up and learn. So yeah, that's the SMART goal framework. Brandon will definitely figure out a way to share this out, but I do think the recording will be online. So that's pretty much all I've got in terms of content. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen now. I think we're going to leave some time for Q&A if people have it, and go from there.
Thank you so much, Josh, for that incredible intervention. I'm pretty sure everyone is waiting to see the recording again and get those slides on them. And we actually do have one question here in the chat. Is one of the biggest challenges for most of us without these skills is finding that initial opportunity to break into the industry. What strategies or advice will you recommend for overcoming this hurdle and suddenly getting a foot in the door?
Awesome. Yeah, really good question. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And I know, yeah, the tech industry and just like the job market right now is really, really tricky. I would say first piece of advice is don't, and this goes back to kind of some of the things that I had listed out in terms of, oh, if things aren't necessarily going your way. Don't feel like you need to go from where you are to the exact role you want immediately. And like that can be a tough thing to hear, but really like understanding, okay, there's probably like, there might be a step between that, right? Like one more line on my resume, a couple more things on my resume that are going to give me just like that extra little juice to get to the role I want. But I would also say is, and I say this to people who are always interested in working for HubSpot, is like on my team or on teams where there's like, okay, these like engineering roles you want, or data analyst roles you want, or data scientist roles you want, it's really hard to get those jobs unless you already have the experience. Like when I'm hiring for analysts, I look for people who have that experience already. But don't discount kind of the importance and the opportunities around like internal mobility. I hire internally a lot at HubSpot. People, like most of the time when we have a new job role, we'll post it internally first because people already have the built-in knowledge. And so if you're at a bigger company, or if you're interested in working for a bigger company, sometimes it's helpful to think about if it's worth it to, I don't know, take a more entry-level job, or maybe a job that's not quite at the level you're currently aspiring to. And kind of, like I was saying before, surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, absorb more knowledge. If someone reaches out on Slack to me and is like, oh, like I'm really interested in like data analyst roles, like I'm going to talk to them. I don't really care what role they're in or like what department they're in. They work at HubSpot. I'm happy to share that knowledge, right? And maybe not everyone's going to be like that, but surrounding yourself with the people who are doing what you want to do is a really, really great first step. So that would be my advice on that front.
Thank you. And following up with getting to be around and surrounded by people, we have another question from Joshua, and he wants to know that in this area of influencing and personal branding in tech, how much of importance should a person place on their brand to gain the attention of companies, and should accomplishments be at the forefront instead of skills?
Yeah, really great question. Really great name. But yeah, I would say for your second question, should accomplishments be at the forefront instead of skills? Yes, for the most part. Like anyone can put SQL or Python or Google Sheets or PowerPoint or whatever on their LinkedIn or their resume, right? But like, depending on the role you want, they're probably going to test for it. So like, you need to make sure you actually have that skill. And if you can go back and say like, oh, I used the skill to do X, Y, and Z and drive X impact on the business, that to me is much more valuable than just saying like, oh, I know SQL, or oh, I know Python, right? And so being able to show the actionable results from a particular skill set that you have, much more important to me. In terms of importance on someone's personal brand, I don't know, I go back and forth on this because like as a hiring manager, I would probably see something and be like, oh, cool, like that's really impressive, right? And like it's just another way to showcase accomplishments or knowledge. So that's good. The other side of me is also like, I actually am really bad at that. Like if you go to my LinkedIn, I maybe post once a year. And so that's not me. And I would say it's not something you have to do. It can definitely help, but there are definitely other ways to kind of have the same effect. And like, it's not like, oh, I have to post on LinkedIn 4 times a day to be successful in my career. Like, I completely disagree with that. And it wouldn't be authentic to me. So, but yeah, and thinking about like, okay, yeah, like personal brand, right? Is like my personal brand is that I don't post on LinkedIn every day, but instead, here are my accomplishments. My brand is kind of built around that. I like to, I don't know, operate a bit more in the background. I like to kind of be support. I know it's a team effort around everything, right? And so like that's my personal brand, and 100% okay if a personal brand doesn't need to be, oh, I'm the loudest voice in the room. So
Awesome. I hope that helps you, Joshua. And moving to our next question, Akram wants to know, I have dealt with the imposter syndrome. How do you recommend snapping out of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do all the time as well. I think it's a tough one, and it's not something that is like really easy for, like, I'll speak for myself, like for me to control, where, yeah, like I'm always like, oh, am I doing a good job? Or like, oh, I messed up that presentation, or, oh, I'm messing up this presentation right now. Yeah, it's something where you really just need to like take a step back. And like, I think the first thing is like identifying that you're doing the thing, right, is like, okay, cool, like the imposter syndrome's kicking in. I'm here for a reason. Like people put me in this role for a reason, or people ask me to do this job for a reason. And then also just being like, okay, cool, like here's the reason and here are the things that I've done to accomplish that, right? And so really, really like taking that step back and being like, okay, like I think about it at a big scale and I think about kind of like the macro of it. Yeah, it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm like forgetting to do this one thing, or like I forgot to do this other thing, or I dropped the ball here, right? It's like all these little things add up, and like each one of those build up to just like the imposter syndrome monster kicking in. And so yeah, thinking about like, okay, like here are the things I did accomplish rather than here are the things I didn't accomplish. That's something where like I take that step back, and it usually helps me. It doesn't completely make it go away, but it does help and be like, okay, cool, like I'm focused on the right things. And if I'm not focused on the right things, what are those things I should be focused on? So, but good question. Not great answers. But yeah, I think it's helpful to at least take that step back in that perspective.
Now you're doing amazing. We have another question from Anna. She says, "Thanks for the great presentation, Josh. With the obstacles we mentioned earlier, what strategies have you found most effective for advocating for yourself in the workplace, especially when it comes to promotion or new opportunities?"
Yeah, I would say the first thing is don't be afraid to ask. I've definitely like fallen in that kind of that trap of like, oh, like if you don't have to ask, like don't like rock the boat or whatever. But like, yeah, don't be afraid to ask. And when you do ask, make sure you're tying it to kind of like accomplishments and reasons why you think you deserve this thing you're advocating for. If you just come up or if you just go up and be like, oh, I deserve this promotion, or like, hey, I deserve this new opportunity because I've been here for 5 years, like that's probably not the best way to approach it. But if you go and be like, oh, I deserve this promotion because I accomplished this and it had this impact on the team or the company, that goes a much longer way. And then your manager has something to work with, right? Because like it's probably also not your manager's choice. Like you need to give them the information and kind of the backup there, right? Like when we do promotions at HubSpot, like I need to go and advocate for this person, and I need to say like, here are all the reasons why. Here's why I think they deserve this. And if you don't provide that to your manager, what are they going to do, right? So it's always important to tie those back. And then the other thing is like build those relationships with the people who make those decisions. Like if they see you as a high performer, as someone who's deserving of this, and then promotion time comes around, you want them to be like, oh, Anna's the first person I think about when I think about a promotion, or like, cool, Anna deserves this new opportunity, this role, because of all of these things that she's like helped me and the team do. So that is kind of just like a ongoing, like make sure you develop those relationships, make sure you're clearly articulating the value you bring to the business. And it's important for you to know those things for yourself, but also like for your manager and your team.
Thank you. One of the advice that gave me a professor while I entered the college was never trust the grade that a professor give you if he doesn't know your name. I'm from Colombia, so probably things work differently in the States. But I think it's true. If the person doesn't know who you are, how are they going to recognize what you're doing well? So you make sure that your managers or the person you want them to know you get to know you. We also have another question here in the chat. It says, whether it be a core belief, a daily practice, or anything in between, what has been most instrumental in your own success?
Yeah, let me think. Core belief, daily practice, or anything in between. I would say always being like willing to help has really helped me. And that's kind of like a basic thing, but being a little bit more specific, where it's like, okay, like I would like to like step up and help in this role, or like not being kind of worried about like, oh, that's not my job, right? Like I think one of my mentors once told me, it was like the worst thing you could possibly say is like, oh, that's not my job. And so yeah, like operating with that mindset of like, hey, like I'm always willing to like go outside my comfort zone, do something else, do whatever is needed for the success of the team or the company. And at HubSpot, we have this, we have kind of like our priority of like, oh, like customer always comes first, right? And so like thinking about what that is for you, right? Like what is the priority for your company, but also like for yourself, like what should be coming first. And that has always helped me in my career, is like I've never saying like, oh, that's not my job. Like I'm always going to help, always going to do it. If my skill set applies, cool, I'm in, right? So I think that's served me pretty well.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. I think we have another question here. If you could leave our attendees with one piece of advice on pursuing goals in the tech industry, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Yeah, I would say is one piece of advice I would say, I guess it kind of does depend on like if you're trying to break into the industry or if you're already in the industry and working to kind of advance. And so I'll maybe just give one answer for each. If you're struggling to break into the industry, or you're trying to break into the industry, I think I had mentioned this earlier, but kind of like identifying places that you want to work rather than jobs that you want. And like I think within the tech industry, like there's a lot of opportunity, right? And so I think it's like, okay, identifying like size of company, right? Like, do you want to work for Google? Do you want to work for a HubSpot, like kind of like large but not like Google level size company, or do you want to work for a company that's much smaller and you'll be able to have kind of more of an immediate impact, even though like the resources might not be the same and it's like a bit more startup-y. So there's kind of that level, and don't just like try and find the job, find the company, and be open to other experiences or other kind of roles at the company than what you're like initially expecting or hoping for, and then work your way into those roles. And in terms of like if you're already at a company or you're already in tech and you're interested in kind of progressing, I mean it goes back to the advice I just gave in terms of like always like figuring out ways to step up, step outside of your comfort zone, expand your scope, leverage your skill set, and like set yourself up for success in that sense.
Awesome. We also have a question from Brandon. It says, I struggle a little to figure out exactly how to quantify my specific impact accomplishment in the digital marketing analytics team at an organization that doesn't really have much wiggle room to build, develop, and optimize campaigns that made an impact outside our daily operations.
Yeah, I work in digital marketing analytics, so I can definitely give my 2 cents at least on this one. Yeah, I feel the same way, where it's like I don't actually have control over the campaigns and optimizing the campaigns and doing what is actually driving the business, right? But at the same time, sometimes I like feel accountable to those things. And yeah, I struggle sometimes too with like figuring out, okay, like I'm being like held accountable to this number, but I can't actually do anything about it. And I'm just like along for the ride. I would say it's rather than being the one trying to like adjust or like make sure the campaigns are working, right? Like that, understanding that that's not necessarily your job. Your job is to help the people who are doing that work understand what is happening, right? Like you need to go and kind of figure out, okay, like, hey, here's the value I can bring. I have this like analysis technical skill set that maybe the marketing team doesn't have. What insight can I bring in addition to what they already know that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise? That's kind of how I've worked in ops and analytics, is trying to uncover the insight that exists in the data that, hey, like your kind of average marketer isn't going to know. And so that's how you bring value. you can have suggestions, but like ultimately what you do is you provide that insight, provide that analysis, and help them make the decisions that they need to make to optimize those campaigns.
Amazing. Thank you, Josh. I think we have time for one last question. If you could go back in time, what will you tell your pre-tech selves before you enter the tech industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think. I would say I would tell my pre-tech self that there is not one path to like get to the role that you want, right? And like there's a bunch of different paths, and like take it decision by decision as you come along. Like don't think about like the end result at the beginning. Like all you can really control is what the next step is going to be, and put yourself in an opportunity to make sure that the next opportunity is even better. So yeah, I think I was struggling through a lot of just like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I applied to business school because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and thought I would go to business school and magically like figure that out while I was at business school. But I probably wouldn't have either. Like I probably would have, I don't know, ended up in tech anyways. But yeah, I ended up not needing to go to business school to get to the role where I currently am. And like both of those would have been viable options, right? So like don't stress too much about kind of the like nitty gritty decisions, and understand that like, okay, like let's just make the decision that feels best in this moment for where I am in my career, in my life, and then trust that like the next decision will bring up an even better opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Josh. Guys, do you have any other question? We have time for one last question. Not. Thank you so much for being here, Josh. This was amazing. Really, really delightful experience. And thank you so much. Remember to follow Josh on LinkedIn. You won't see a lot of posts from him, but you're one link away.
Yeah, no promises that you'll get a lot of content, but feel free to reach out. And yeah, looking forward to hearing from everyone. Thanks so much for coming.